So listening to all these great talks this morning and listening to this beautiful language, Swedish, and I know you don't hear this often from Danes, but you do have a more beautiful language than we do. It's like singing, right? I feel so tempted to do that, to speak Swedish, to try to speak Swedish anyway. But I know you won't understand me and I won't understand you anyway, so I will refrain from that, and I promise that to Martin and Jens and the other organizers. So I will do this in English. I first of all want to just acknowledge Martin, Jens, Joachim, all the guys from Potential Project in Sweden and also from Previa who have been organizing this conference. It's really encouraging to see that mindfulness is taking off big time in Sweden, so thank you very much for doing this. So my own history goes back quite some years. I met mindfulness 20-some years ago, and it had a huge impact on my life. To me, it was kind of waking up to life, suddenly being more effective in doing the things that I had to do, suddenly being more present with my family and with my friends. And I thought it was so cool, and I thought, I'm going to bring this to the entire world. And I had no idea how to do that, and I was too young anyway. So I did my master's and I became a researcher in organizational learning, organizational development. I started to work in the Sony Corporation, so I kind of did the corporate world, I did the research group work, and at some point I just realized that all the people that I've been working with and all my staff in the Sony Corporation, they were highly ineffective. Highly ineffective. I know it's very different in Stockholm, I'm very sure it's very different here. But what I realized was that their way of dealing with their minds while they were at work sucked. Sorry to say, but that's what I could really very clearly see with the background in mindfulness, where you really learn to develop this effective mind, this mind that is focused on what it's doing, not getting engaged in distractions. They sucked. So back then I thought someone has to take mindfulness, this very soft thing, and put into the very corporate world to kind of develop mental effectiveness, resilience. And I looked around in the world to find the organization I could work for, and it didn't exist in Denmark, it didn't exist in Sweden, it wasn't in anywhere I could see in Europe, it wasn't anywhere in the world. So I started developing myself, or I thought I would do that. So I got my first job in an organization in Copenhagen. And I was so excited. I'd been practicing for 15 years. And now I had to teach to all these busy people. And we went on the whole morning, and I was so excited. I taught them everything I'd been taught. And we went for lunch, and after lunch, they didn't come back. It was very painful back then, and I'm happy you can laugh about it now, and that I can laugh about it. But what I was taught back then was, if you want to take mindfulness, which is perceived as something really soft, private, spiritual, and bring into the hard-nosed corporate world, you really need to frame it in a very specific way. So I brought together some of my own teachers from around the world. I brought together some leading researchers in neurology and organizational development, and some business leaders, and I said, hey guys, find a way of doing this. And they all looked at me and they said, you're goddamn crazy. Don't even think about it. But they did, and we did, and we started developing the corporate-based mindfulness training program. And now it's expanded into some 20 countries with people in 20 countries, working with some of the companies that Martin and others have mentioned today. So it's really interesting to see that mindfulness has a footing in these organizations, if it's done in a good way. So, too fast. So what I'm going to talk about now is really how does mindfulness relate to results, business results, also individual results. And we had this funny tagline of from mindless business to mindful business, because that's really what it's about. So I'm going to start by talking a bit about how does mindfulness relate to results, and then why is it that results are getting increasingly difficult? What's going wrong in the corporate or in the work world today? I'm going to talk about multitasking. Sorry, girls. And then I'm going to end on three stories from three organizations we work with, just to see what kind of different impact you can have in organizations like Carlsberg, Google, and If Insurance. So that's kind of the topic. So first of all, the question, why do these companies like McKinsey, like Google, Microsoft, and so on, really blue chip, high-performing companies, why do they use mindfulness training? And the answer, I have a fairly clear answer on that, because I'm so fortunate to be able to travel around the world and talk to our clients and ask the leaders who initiate the programs, why do you do this? And they come up with more or less the same question. And we have condensed this to what we call the paid reality, or the paid world. Not just because people are paid to be in those organizations, but because this is an acronym for 4 words. First one being under pressure. How many of you, when you're at work, feel like you're under pressure? Most of you, almost all of you. How many of you feel like you're always on, you know, with our mobile devices, iPhones and so on? Who feel you're always on? Yeah. Who feel like you're information overloaded, just too much information to cope with at the same time? And working in environments that are highly distracted, Office Communicator, Link, Facebook, all this stuff coming towards you all the time. Have that as well? Came to Stockholm? Very good. Well, maybe not so good, but that's what it is. It's a paid reality. And we see it in Australia, we see it in Asia, we see it in Europe, we see it in North America. No difference whatsoever. So an important question is, when you're living in the paid reality, what kind of mental qualities or mental state, mind state, do you need to achieve the results that you want to achieve? I would ask you just to turn to your neighbor just for 30 seconds and come up with 2 or 3 key mind states, mental qualities, whether it's focus, whether it's resilience, whatever. Just come up with a few simple words. 30 seconds, please. All right, thank you. It's always interesting to see in different cultures how fast people reply and come back to me. In Asia, it's like snappy. In Australia, it takes 2 minutes. You have to ring the bell and the dong, you have to shout at them. Stockholm, fairly good, thank you. So who has got a few qualities that you would need to achieve results in the paid reality? Yes, please.
You have to be very machine-like and just drive through.
Machine-like, drive through, thank you. Yes?
Clear in the now.
Being in the now, yeah.
Have very clear goals and determination.
Clear goals, determination, thank you. Yeah. What else?
Self-aware.
Self-aware, yes. Thank you. Prioritize, the ability to really know what's important right now. Very good, thank you. Yeah. One last one.
Awareness of others.
Awareness of others is quite important. Yeah, definitely. That's what Maria was also talking about this morning. Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. So the question is, where do results actually come from? I mean, we may have some mind states that are really good, but where do these results that we're trying to achieve, where do they come from? Very logically, they come from the actions we perform. Do you agree with that? Did you ever achieve a result without doing anything? Not often, huh? And the actions obviously come from the choices that we make. Without making a choice, whether it's conscious or subconscious, we don't do any actions. Do you agree? And the big question is, where do the choices come from? And obviously they come from our thoughts, from the mind. Can you agree with that? So results come from the way that we deal with our mind or with our thoughts. Okay? If that is really true, then there is a very important personal question to ask ourselves. How well do you manage our thoughts in order to achieve the desired results in life? And we could talk about this for a long time. I would rather just make a little test. I'm going to ask you to test this for yourself. How well do you manage your thoughts? How well do you manage your mind? And it'll just take 30 seconds. Are you game for a little test? Yeah. Great. So I'm asking you to close your eyes. And just for the next 30 seconds, focus on one thought of your own choice. Could be a meeting that you attended yesterday or an email you have to write tonight. Choose one thought, focusing on that. Any other thoughts arising, pay no attention. Any sounds distracting you, no attention. Just one thought.
your eyes again.
And with an honest raise of hands, how many of you had one or more other thoughts than the one that you tried to focus on? Hands up. Seems like 95% of you. Those of you who didn't, maybe you were asleep. Okay, so that's interesting, isn't it? I gave you very simple instructions, just focus on that one thing, and all kinds of other things came up. And that's really the nature of the human mind. Maria talked about the default mode of the default network, just wandering away constantly. And it's a little bit like John up here. John sitting Monday morning, having to write a very important report, has to be delivered by 12 o'clock, period. And he's thinking about something else. Whether you're John or whether you're playing golf, can you recognize this from your own work? Yeah. And then later in the day, John finally gets to play his golf, and he's thinking about something else, hopefully his wife, we've got no idea. And finally at the end of the day, he gets home, or wherever it is, and he thinks back at work. And that's really what the human mind is like nowadays. We're so preoccupied with the past and with the future, and very often not present right now. Can you recognize it? So if this is really our ability to lead or to manage, to control our mind, how are we supposed to deliver the results that we want to deliver? And I'll give you a little example here. This is Jacob. Jacob is one of our clients in Denmark. He's the vice president of a large financial institution in Copenhagen. And Jacob, he came to me some years ago, and he basically said, Rasmus, I've got unwanted results. Unwanted results in my life. I'm on autopilot. I feel like I'm reacting all the time. And this is because I get 200 emails every day. I've got so many meetings every day. I've got all my employees who's asking my attention. I have my boss who's asking for my attention. There are conflicts. When I come home, there's my wife and there's my dog, and you know the whole game, it's just life. And he said, I have unwanted results because I have the wrong actions. I don't attend to things in the right way. I react. I'm on autopilot. I do that because I have the wrong choices, and I do that basically because my thoughts are messy. That's the kind of analysis we came through together. And for a period of time we met and basically went through this corporate-based mindfulness training program that Martin talked about. So we met for 9 sessions of an hour, and he had to sit 10 minutes every day. And after these, it was about 4 months, he had been sitting for 10 minutes every day. You know, he was a busy man, it was a big time commitment for him. I asked him, so Jacob, what did you get out of this? And he looked at me and he said, I got 1 second. And I'm not a mathematician, but I could see this was really bad business. I mean, he spent hours and he just got 1 second. But his explanation made a lot of sense. What he said was that he got 1 second of freedom in his mind, so that when he received an email or when one of his employees wanted something from him, whereas before he was so busy, so caught up that he was on autopilot, he would just react. Now he had 1 second of freedom that he could choose the most appropriate response and thereby the most appropriate action and thereby deliver the most appropriate results or the desired results that he wanted. Does that make sense? So he basically said that mindfulness got him 1 second ahead so that he could achieve the results that he wanted. So input coming into the brain through the eyes, through the ears, whatever, or from the mind itself. And normally we go down in autopilot reaction when we're under pressure. Mindfulness gives you this 1 second of choosing the most appropriate response to it, thereby having the best action and getting the best results. And that's really what mindfulness is about, getting that 1 second ahead. Does it make sense? Yeah. Then the big question is, why is mindfulness important or crucial nowadays to get these results? And there's a very simple answer to that, which is work life has changed radically over the last few decades. Up here on the left-hand side, we have a picture of what work life looked like years ago. The essence of that is we had one thing that we had to attend to at any given moment. Whether it was a typewriter, a person, whatever, that was the point of our attention. Does any of you feel like that's your work life nowadays? Not really? It's a shame. Over here, the essence of that is lots of information coming towards us all the time. Constantly bombarded with information through all our mobile devices, all our computers, people in open offices. We're just constantly bombarded. Our attention is under siege. And what happens when the brain is confronted with more than one stream of information at the same time is that it tries to solve all of it at the same time. Multitasking. That's what the brain makes us do when we live in the paid reality. And let's just have a look at multitasking and what multitasking does to us. I would like you to do another test, a multitasking test. I'm asking you to find a piece of paper like on the screen here and a pen. Okay, so what I'm asking you to do first on this piece of paper is to draw 4 horizontal lines, as you can see up on the screen. While you're doing that, I'll just send a text to my wife. No, I'll just put my timer on. Next thing that I'm asking you to do, only when I tell you to do, not yet, but it is on the first line to write, I'm a great multitasker, and after that, not yet, on the second line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up until 20. I'll be timing you while you're doing that, just to see if you're as fast as Danes are. And that's not true. I'll be timing you just so you can see how fast you are. I'll say 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and so on. Are you ready? We will start now. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. 15. Danes normally take around 45 seconds. 20. Norwegians about 3 minutes. 25. 30. And the last 5 seconds. 35. Did you all manage? Well done. Faster than the Danes. What I'm asking you to do now on the next 2 lines is to write exactly the same thing, but in a different order. I, 1, A, 2. You're going to multitask. I'll be timing you again. Are you ready? Go. 5 seconds. Some of you are done by now. 10 seconds. Take your time, don't get stressed, and don't make mistakes. 15 seconds. And now, since we don't have all day, 20 seconds, please hurry up a bit. Most of you were done by now. 25 seconds. 30 seconds. This is when Norwegians would start. 35, sorry, Norway. 40. Keep on working, no mistakes, hurry up. 45, you'll do 5 more seconds. 50. If you haven't finished by now, just forget about it, put away pen and paper. And a few simple questions. How many of you were approximately twice as fast in the first one as in the second one? Hands up. Most of you. How many of you made mistakes or were about to make mistakes in the first one? No one. Impressive. Oh, that's 1, thank you. It's nice to be honest. 2 ones, thank you. How many of you made mistakes or were about to make mistakes in the second one? Most of you. Well done. Last question. How many of you found that the first one was a little bit more simple and the other one just a little more stressful? Right. Okay, so we learned 3 fundamental things about multitasking. We make more mistakes, it takes longer time, and it's more stressful. Any happy multitaskers in the room? Okay, let's just look at the science of multitasking, because there's been a huge amount of science done on this, especially from Stanford University, where they've gone into organizations, looked at people multitasking away, and see what it does to them. First of all, it reduces efficiency, just takes longer time. Secondly, it kills the overview. People lose the sense of priorities and what's really important right now. Thirdly, it decreases the quality of what we're doing. Fourthly, it reduces well-being. It hampers creativity. It drains our energy. And second, or lastly, is that it's rewiring our brain. Maria talked about neuroplasticity. If you just multitask away, you'll get a multitasking brain, which means it will be a default way of working, which means you will just by default reduce your efficiency, reduce your quality, hamper your creativity, and so on. That's what science says. One of our clients is by far the biggest multitaskers in the world. They did some research themselves as well. It's the McKinseys. And they come to this conclusion: multitasking is a terrible coping mechanism. If we want to be effective, we need to stop. There is one more fundamental downside of multitasking, which has been documented in a few studies in recent years. It's been published in Harvard Business Review not so long ago. A researcher, Edward Hallowell, went into organizations, looked at our ability to pay attention, to be focused, to be present. And what you could see is that over the last 20 years, our ability for that has dropped radically. He calls it attention deficit trait. Simply inability to pay attention to what's going on right now. Whether it's a meeting, whether it's an email, whatever it is. Attention deficit trait. We're losing our ability to pay attention because we're living in the paid reality, which makes us multitask. Another of our clients, Accenture, has come through research to the conclusion that understanding and managing attention is now the single most important determinant of business success. If this is really true, and we are not managing our mind, there's a huge gap and there's a huge potential to be developed here. Just a last little stat, and then I'll stop with this burning platform and red slides and go to the more positive sides. How much of our time, or of your time, do you think that on average you are just wandering away involuntarily? Waking hours, how many percent? Any good guesses?
80%.
80%. Wow. 98. 98. Even worse. Okay, it's not that bad. It's 46.9. Still, I mean, that's half of your life that you're not paying attention to your life. Past is gone, present or future has not come yet. Only thing you have right now is right now. And if you're not present with that, where's your life and what kind of results are you achieving? So this was the burning platform. This is why organizations take in mindfulness, because they can see there's a huge attention deficit trait syndrome in organizations, and thereby a huge potential to be developed. Does that make sense? And it all comes from this paid reality and our multitasking. But there is hope, and this is what Maria talked about this morning. The neural networks of the brain, and she talked about 100 billion of these cells, those balls up there, and they have about 5,000 to 10,000 synapses, these bridges that go between them. And as she explained, basically the brain is changing constantly. Every second it's changing according to how we use it. So we can train it. So we're not doomed to have attention deficit trait, but we can actually train our ability to be present, to be focused, to pay attention by will to whether it's an email or it's our daughter, or whether it's, was it hot chocolate or? Yeah, okay, I thought so. I didn't know that word, but okay. Yeah. And that's really what mindfulness is. So a very simple definition, mindfulness is learning to manage your attention, or learning to manage your mind, learning to manage your thoughts, so that you can get the right choices, thereby have the right actions, and achieve the desired results. That's really what mindfulness is basically about. Does that make sense? Okay. Some of the results of applying mindfulness in the work life. And these are just specifically for research done in organizations implementing these 10 minutes a day, including a bit more of those mental strategies that Martin talked about, and bringing it into work life, is that people get increased job performance. Cambridge University is researching this. They found increased job performance. That's a great thing. The interesting thing is people are not just only performing better, but they also have a better work-life balance at the same time. They also feel better, have more quality of life, increased job satisfaction, increased focused attention, decreased emotional exhaustion, which is the core component of burnout and stress. So these are really tangible, great business benefits that come from this kind of training. And then I would like to just, at the end, share these 3 stories of 3 organizations who took it in and let them speak with their own words, the leaders of these organizations, why they did it and what they got out of it. Before I do that, I'll just show that mindfulness can actually be modulated, it can be formed to serve different purposes. And that's what we are doing in our work. We don't just do mindfulness, but we always categorize it into 3 boxes. Either we work on performance and effectiveness, which mindfulness is fantastic for, or we work specifically on creativity and energy, which is crucial for performance as well, or we work on balance and resilience. And I'm going to show you these 3 organizations because they look specifically at these 3 different ones, one by one. So first we'll take Carlsberg. Carlsberg, very, very high-pressured executing company. This is the CIO, Kenneth. He's a very kind man. He went through some major restructuring in the organization, major layoffs, and he said, our people is under such an extreme pressure right now. They still need to perform well. They need to be effective. So they brought in this program and delivered it all over Europe and out of Europe. And what he saw was that they got more focused, more effective, and less stressed. In the midst of layoffs, in the midst of restructuring, by applying this kind of mindfulness. That was interesting. Another thing might not be as surprising as Google. This is Lauren Schuster from Singapore. He's from Canada, but he's based in Singapore and running most of Google's operations in Asia. And Google, it's a very interesting, very forward-thinking company. He was much on this with creativity and energy, innovation, new ideas. That's what Google is all about. That's why they started the program. And at the end, as he says, more presence, more engagement, and more meaning, which was essential for him, for his staff to be really high-performing. But the last case that I'll show you is If Insurance, which is much bigger in Sweden than it is in Denmark. But we're working closely with the organization in Denmark. Most of the leaders there have been through very long training programs, and we're doing it on the 5th year now. All of the employees have been through the program. So it's a big thing in If Insurance in Denmark. The guy who initiated it, Thomas Berg, was a sales director. Very linear thinking, and he had this expectation: this will make us more productive. This will, give us more bottom line benefits. And Thomas, he found that he got this, and his staff got that. But after a while, after a few weeks even, he came to me and he said something that really touched my heart and which really touched to the essence and the purpose of mindfulness, which is, I'm realizing we become better human beings. So while mindfulness in a business sense is about achieving the right results, getting the bottom line benefits, the underlying current of it is also we find some peace with ourselves. And when we find peace with ourselves, we find peace with other people, we become better human beings. And that to me is what mindfulness is really about. That it helps business, that's good. But this is the essence. So those were the words from me for today. I'm very happy to have had you as my audience. And just checking, how much of the time were you actually present with this presentation? 40 seconds. Thank you, Johan. Very accurate. I was testing. Thank you very much. So thank you very much for organizing this conference. Thank you much for attending, and hope you'll have a wonderful day. Thank you.